Welcome to Make Magic Happen with Kat O'Sullivan. Over the next hour, you'll hear from Kat and her guests who will help you create the life you really want, even if it feels impossible. Now, here's Kat.
Okay, now wait. Create the life you really want? Is that really possible? Absolutely. Yep, Kat here. And that's what Make Magic Happen is all about. But first, I want to welcome you to my new show. Whether you're here live or maybe you're listening to the replay, either way, I am so happy to have you along for the journey. Hey, I got to admit, listening to that intro, well, I have a lot to live up to, especially since this is all new to me. And that's both a challenge and an opportunity, like anything new we take on. Yeah, when I say hell yes to this opportunity, I was both, excited and terrified at the same time, knowing I'd need lots of that magic to make it happen. In prepping for the show, well, I've had my moments. I've actually had to send myself to my now metaphorical website, getovermyself.com. Yet, I know this is going to be a wild ride in the best way possible. It's my hope that what follows will both challenge you and create new possibilities in your life. Now, let's pretend we're sharing a cup of coffee or perhaps a glass of wine and having a conversation between friends. Question for you. Are you disruptable? Do you even want to be disruptable? It's not a word we hear often. What I mean by disruptable is that you are ready to step back, interrupt your norm, and consider what else is possible. Are you facing a significant transition in your life? Facing a difficult choice? Or perhaps there's something you secretly, or maybe not so secretly, wish you could be or do, but it just feels impossible. Yeah, let's get real. Shift happens. Yeah, I said it. Shift happens. And when it does, we get to choose. We can react and give away our power, or we can choose to be disruptable and take back our power. My motto, hey, when shift happens, it's time to make magic happen. Now, let me clear up what I mean by that. I'm not talking about magic as in hocus pocus. I'm talking about the magic that happens when you choose to be disruptable and discover what else is possible in your life. Another question. No matter what your circumstances are, what if this is the perfect time to create the life you really want? How are you feeling just even pondering that possibility? If your first thought is, yeah, but you're exactly in the right place. In this first episode, we're going to explore becoming disruptable and how it can create a magical disruption that will help you discover new possibilities in your life. First things first, though, do you see disruption as friend or foe? Let's face it, disruption got a bad rap. It's easy to see it as foe. Life can put very real difficulties in our path. But what if now is the perfect time to say hell yes to that thing that's been, well, tugging at your heart that you haven't pursued yet? Now, I'm emphasizing yet because there is power in that word. It keeps the door open to new possibilities. And when we combine it with yes, well, it allows us to be disruptable. in the best way possible. Now brace yourself. What if disruption could actually be your BFF? What if disruption is an opportunity to create a shift that would allow you to be more, do more of what lights you up? What shift would make all the difference for you? What immediately comes to mind? Oh, please, don't overthink it. Don't analyze it. Don't judge it. Owning it is the first step towards making it a reality. Now, know that I'm using the word shift instead of change intentionally. We've all been taught that change, it's the only constant in life, so we should just get over it, right? Well, reframing shift is my way to avert the immediate resistance that comes when we say or hear the word change. No, not that. Change suggests that someone, something is wrong, broken, in need of being fixed. Shift, on the other hand, well, it reflects a natural evolutionary movement from one thing to another. No fixing required. Whether the shift you're pondering is something small but significant, or something over the top, any change, shift, can be a bit scary. Okay, a lot scary. And alert ahead, saying hell yes to that shift, it's guaranteed to be disruptive. Wait, what? You're probably thinking, why the bleep would I want to do that? Good news, if given the chance, making that shift can also be magical. If you're thinking, how does that happen? Well, it all starts with a K shift. Yeah, it's a made-up word that's become my brand. A K shift is that aha moment when you experience a catalytic shift in perspective. And yes, I'm spelling catalytic with a K. After all, it is my brand. It's a shift that reveals what you can't see, connects dots you never expected. It opens up new possibilities. If you let it, a K-shift will take you on a transformational journey. And that only happens when you're willing to be disruptable and give yourself permission to ponder new possibilities and then have the courage to embrace them. You might be wondering how that's played out in my life. Well, here goes. I've made many K-shifts throughout my life, personally and professionally, and they've created unexpected magical disruptions. But in the wake of COVID, lots of shift was happening. Despite all the K-shifts that I've made, I felt like I was back to square one. What's up with that? Guess it should be no surprise because, each K-shift I make always prepares me for the next. Well, it was time for me to buckle up and trust that I'm ready for this next K-shift. But then, imagine, I'm sitting at my desk, frustrated, overwhelmed, when my husband, Michael, asks a seemingly innocent question. It changes everything. Hey, hun, can I get you anything? Yeah, I knew he was talking about coffee, but my first thought, I want a new life. Yeah, a new life. Of course, I couldn't say that out loud. Have you ever said one thing when you meant something different? Been afraid to share your truth, even with a loved one? Yeah, it's a tough place to be. So how the heck to share what I really want with Michael? He's been so supportive, but really a new life? When I finally get the courage to share that with Michael, it goes something like this. Hey, hun, I appreciate your support, but, we're in such a different place. You've been required. You've been retired for quite a while and have a life. I have my work. Never the twain shall meet. It's like we're married singles. Time is just passing us by. What I really want is a new life. Okay, well, there were a few tears shed between us. Then Michael braces himself for the 4 dreaded words. I have an idea. He knows we're headed for yet another huge shift. I share that I want more time with him and to make a shift from consulting and coaching to finally writing my book and speaking. Now that would make my heart sing. Well, the big question on both our minds is, how the heck can we afford to make that happen? We're totally dependent on my income, and there's no way we can maintain our lifestyle on our fixed income. Well, at least not living in Los Angeles. Making that big of a shift in the middle of the pandemic, well, it seemed impossible. Or was it? Time to remind myself what I do best. Shift my thinking from impossible to possible. I'll let you in on a little secret. There are 2 magical questions that make all the difference. You might want to write these down. What if it is possible? And what am I not seeing? Yes. What if it is possible? And what am I not seeing? Yeah, you might want to write those down. Asking those 2 questions is like magic for me, and it can be for you too. Next thing I know, I come across an article about a woman who retired in Mexico on her fixed income. Really? Mexico? That's crazy. But gets me thinking, what if moving to Mexico would allow me to pursue what I really want sooner than later? I research everything about life in Mexico. Fascinating. Challenges so many assumptions. Maybe Mexico isn't so far-fetched. It's then that I come across a thought-provoking quote by Charles Dubois. The important thing is this: to be able at any moment to sacrifice what we are for what we could become. Be able at any moment to sacrifice what we are for what we could become. Now that felt like a challenge. Oh, I lie awake, tossing, turning, wondering, can I really have the courage to let go of what I've been so successful at? Can I dare to believe something else is possible, especially at this stage of my life? Oh, wait, why should that matter? Time to shift that mindset. Yeah, I had a successful consulting practice for over 15 years. Should be happy, right? But I sound just like my clients, whining. What worked before isn't working anymore. It's lost its meaning. I was stuck, miserable. I was thinking, I just can't do this anymore. How often do we say that, and yet we keep doing what we're doing? Yeah, moment of truth. Am I willing to sacrifice the status quo and discover what else is possible? Well, before I go on with my dilemma, let me ask you, what are you willing to let go of to create the life you really want. And what would that new life even look like? Well, for me, it was time to envision what that new life could look like. I decide we need to create a wish list. But it's quickly sabotaged by a raging battle between me and my negative self-talk. Mexico, really? At this stage in your life? And the beat goes on. Keep in mind, negative self-talk only has the power we give it. I decide to ignore all that and we get busy creating our wish list. Wherever we move, it needs to be affordable, of course, safe, yeah, have excellent health care, be easily accessible, and have a moderate climate. Oh, and being near mountains and water, well, that would make my heart sing. Before I know it, Lake Chapala, Mexico appears on my radar. Too good to be true? Well, I whip out our wish list. Amazing. Lake Chapala checks all the boxes. So imagine we leave the United States in the middle of a friggin' pandemic to move to another country, different culture, foreign language, leaving what we thought was our forever home, family, friends, colleagues, and yes, even my hairstylist. No turning back. We're on our way to a new life. Sound risky? Well, what if failing to take a risk is the biggest risk of all? You know, in this first segment, I've asked you some poignant questions. Know that you can always listen to the replay if you need more time to ponder and reflect on any of them. Well, it's been 2.5 years since we made this bold and risky move, but it continues to pay off big time. More on that after the break. But first, what is your Mexico? Are you ready to discover what else is possible? Well, I have the perfect guest to help you with that. Yes, time for a quick break, but after the break, you'll meet Paul Daniels, a colleague who has been a dear friend who will take us into the periphery, a way to discover new possibilities in the most unlikely places. So, stay tuned. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Welcome back to Make Magic Happen with Kat O'Sullivan. Have a question for Kat or her guests? Join us on the show at 888-346-9141. That's 888-346-9141. Now back to the show.
Okay, yeah, we're back. It's great to have you on this journey with me. If you're just joining us, welcome. In our first segment, we explored what it means to be disruptable. And we got real about what to do when shift happens and how, when we're disruptable, we can make magic happen and much more. And know that you can always get the rest of the story by listening to the replay. Oh, but before I forget, here's how our monumental move to Mexico played out. Yes, making that move in the middle of the pandemic did seem crazy. And when I said I wanted to create a new life, people said, "Why would you want to do that?" Everyone thought I had it all together. Well, looks can be deceiving. I was burned out, wanted to make a shift from consulting and coaching to finally writing my book and speaking. And yes, it seemed impossible. Yet, shifting my thinking and saying hell yes to new possibilities, well, it turned out to be the best thing ever. Never did I imagine that 2.5 years later, I would have published my book, From Doubt to Do, Navigating Your Pathway to Possibility. And drumroll, here I am on Voice America. It's amazing what happens when we say hell yes to what we really want. Oh, and just before the break, I did a little tease. I told you that my guest, Paul Daniels, was going to take us into the periphery and help us discover new possibilities in the most unlikely places. So, well, let's welcome Paul. Oh, wait, first, know that despite early setbacks, Paul has become a renowned international speaker, best-selling author, founder of Peripheral Thinkers. In addition to being a colleague, Paul's become a dear friend who has helped me see new possibilities, even when I've been stuck. Yeah, I'm not immune from that phenomena. I'm grateful and excited to have Paul as my very first guest. So, okay, time to fasten your seatbelt for our journey into the periphery. So, Paul, before we go there, well, say a little about those early setbacks and how learning about a secret set of super skills found in many of the world's most prolific innovators changed your life.
Hi, Kat, and hello, everyone. Look, I was labeled slow, stupid, a daydreamer, and an outsider as a child. It followed me to university, into graduate school, and even into my professional career. And while I had climbed the ladder of 2 Fortune 500 companies by the time I was 39, I was still an outsider. At age 40, a diagnosis sent me down a path to study and learn about the secret super skills found in many of the world's most prolific innovators. These people see what other people miss. They share their insights and inspire generations. People like Henry Ford, Edison, Agatha Christie, JFK, Aaron Brockovich, Barbara Corcoran from the Shark Tank, Richard Branson, and a whole bunch more. All innovative leaders and social contributors. They are make magic happen people. And they happen to be dyslexic. That's right, dyslexic. Now, while only 10 to 15% of the population is born with dyslexia, between 20 and 30% of entrepreneurs and nearly 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic. Heck, NASA actively recruits people with dyslexia. And some have even called dyslexia the MIT disease. It's not a disease, it's a learning difference where the brain processes information uniquely. This unique process is at the core of their innate super skills. And depending on the studies and references, there are approximately 12 to 19 super skills. But best of all, we've cracked the code. Anyone, anywhere, at any age can learn and apply these skills to achieve anything that you can imagine. Talk about a magical disruption.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I hope people really took that all in, because I'm sure there's those of you out there who were or have been diagnosed with dyslexia that might have thought that was a problem. But as Paul shared, it's super special. So, Paul, I'm sure our listeners are wondering what journeying into the periphery really means.
Well, peripheral thinking is, as I mentioned, this set of super skills. And peripheral thinking specifically translates the skills found within those dyslexic innovators for neurotypical individuals. We see the world differently. We see opportunities where others see obstacles. And it's learning some of those skills. In fact, given time, we'll learn one of those skills today that drive you to see change as an opportunity, not a challenge, and find those opportunities everywhere, anytime, anywhere.
Okay, now, Paul, I've experienced an exercise that you take people through that really helps us understand what that periphery is all about. Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the parts of my keynote that always sparks this lively interaction with the audience is a little step set, but I need to do a little setup before we do this exercise. Okay, so most brains, when faced with change or a challenge, examine that obstacle, the one that's keeping you from reaching your goal or the life you've always wanted. Your mind looks beyond the change or challenge to the destination. Your mind references the past, what's worked previously. It also considers your current environment. What is that obstacle? What are my companions and colleagues? What is my community doing? And your brain takes in all of these as cues for input to inform the approach to overcoming the challenge. That's common. That's logical. It's conventional. You plan your work and you work your plan. But for innovators, the disruptors that say, hell yes, their process is different because their reference is different. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this. And to do that, we're going on an unconventional journey. Now, all you need to pack is your imagination and your willingness to follow my lead. You ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
Great. I knew you would be. Imagine that you're standing in a mountain field covered with wildflowers. The sun is warm on your face, the air is crisp and cool, and as you look out onto that mountain field, bam, right in front of you is the largest change or challenge that you've faced, and it's rising like a monolith. Okay, now your next step is to take a hand and cover your eyes. Don't cover them completely, just put it in front of your face so you can't see. Right. Now, if you're driving, do not be doing this. If you're listening to the replay, don't do this, just imagine it. Okay, so you've got your hand in front of your face. Now, you may not be able to make out what's directly in front of you, but what can you see? Well, you can look up, down, left, right. In fact, move your eyes around and find something where you are that you haven't noticed before. Something you haven't noticed before. You got it? Okay, you can take your hand down. While you may not be able to make out all the details which you saw that you noticed, you can acknowledge that it's there. That's peripheral vision. Now turn your head and look at that object that you saw. For me, there's a small shadow coming through the blinds in my window. I see it more clearly now, more defined because, well, I'm looking at it. And as we look at that monolithic change or challenge that you're facing from the mountain field, imagine that you move to the left, say 100 yards. What does this new vantage point uncover about your challenge? Well, likely you get some more details. You see its size and its shape and depth, and you can continue that analysis of that challenge by walking around it in a circle. Right, a 360-degree review. But your view of the challenge is still from your perspective, possibly filtered through a set of experiences. So from that spot, some 100 yards to the left of your original starting point, this time, instead of looking at your challenge, look around. Now what can you see? Well, likely there are other objects and different terrain, and there are people, but these people, they're not part of your organization or your group or your community, and they're not looking at your challenge. They have their own challenges. They have their own approaches and processes and solutions. They have their own way of overcoming challenges, on achieving objectives and reaching their goals in living a life they've always wanted. Some of the best ideas may come from those people's experiences, and they may have insights that you need to see your challenge from an alternative perspective using a new reference. You see, some of the best ideas don't necessarily come by looking ahead or behind. Some of the best ideas are found in the periphery. And when you increase your awareness while in the periphery, you engage in peripheral thinking. Remember, peripheral vision, peripheral awareness, peripheral thinking. Peripheral thinking is a set of super skills that mirror the skills found in those innovative leaders that I mentioned. And the journey that we went on the mountain field uses a super skill called interpreting. Interpreting is the one skill all innovators have in common. Interpreting takes seemingly unrelated ideas and solutions from the periphery and reassembles them in new ways.
Yeah. So that peripheral thinking sounds a lot like K-shift.
Yeah, right.
You know, the two seem to really blend really well.
Yes.
Now, I do have to ask you, in your experience, like, what is the thing that gets in the way of people looking out there beyond their typical field of vision?
The nemesis of peripheral thinking is conventional wisdom and perceived best practices. Those are often defined by an industry leader or a community leader, and their intentions are well informed and desired, but without a broad set of experiences, they can be from narrow perspectives.
Mm.
The same as status quo, life is okay. Those are the enemy of better, more thriving, more enjoyable, hell yes moments.
Yeah, it sounds to me like something I've been accused of getting on my soapbox about, which is let's do away with best practices and look for promising practices.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
Promising practices.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Sure.
So
And
I
you
think
need
that's
to go into the periphery in order to find those promising practices. And I encourage people to move to Mexico. And if that's not possible, then just expand your awareness when you go around the corner to Fred's coffee shop. You don't have to go to Fiji. You don't have to do incredible adventures to explore new ideas and possibilities. You just simply engage different people, different cultures, different countries, different environments, different experiences, and grab those principles that can apply in the interpreting way to your existing challenge, change, or obstacle, or even reaching new goals.
Yeah, I have to say, moving to Mexico, it did broaden our perspective. It challenged a lot of assumptions. And yeah, it's amazing what happens when you're willing to put yourself in situations that are outside of, your comfort, that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So it means, like you said, what difference would it make if when you went to the coffee shop, you actually talked to somebody that you wouldn't normally talk to and ask questions,
Yeah,
did
exactly.
a little deep dive.
Right. So, for example, here's an example just to test to see if everyone that's listening understands the interpreting skill or peripheral thinking. 3 questions. What does a bakery in Bulgaria have to do with a steel mill in Spain? What does a movie theater in Malaysia have in common with a distribution center in Denmark? Well, conventional wisdom's kind of saying, well, they got people, maybe some processes, but there's not a lot in common there. Okay, well, what does a flu in China have in common with unemployment around the world? Well, up until 2019, conventional wisdom said nothing. Well, peripheral thinking said, hang on a second, they may have more in common than you think. In fact, there may be some ideas here that we can use. That's the key. Seeing what others miss and applying those in unique ways.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it can be challenging. These are really powerful and empowering insights, Paul. It's
And
exciting to ponder how being a peripheral thinker will make all the difference as we explore what else is possible, as we, make those case shifts. So if you want more of Paul's insights, I encourage you, check out his monthly newsletter. Unlike some other newsletters that are salesy and fall flat on content, Paul's are always chock full of even more insight on the value of peripheral thinking with practical how-tos that will help you continue to expand what you think is possible. You can check out those past issues on his website, peripheralthinkers.com. I encourage you to subscribe if you're ready to rock and roll. You can also connect with Paul at pauldanielsjr.com. Now, for those of you listening live, in this next segment, it's your chance to call in and join the conversation with Paul and I. We look forward to hearing your questions and what new insights you've gained. We'd also love to know how you plan to use those insights as you ponder what else is possible. Let's connect after a brief break.
Welcome back to Make Magic Happen with Kat O'Sullivan.
Welcome back. Yeah. In our previous segments, we learned what it means to be disruptable. And my amazing guest, Paul, took us into the periphery to find how to find even more possibilities and much more. So again, if you're just joining us, know you can always get the rest of the story by listening to the replay. Now it's your turn, like I said, if you dare. Give us a call and join the conversation. While we're waiting to see if anyone is brave enough, I wanted to share something with Paul that I heard this week that I thought, it really resonated. I used to do a lot of work on how to deal with different generations, because as I'm sure you know, they all operate a little differently.
Yeah.
And that can be a bit confusing. And anyway, I heard this thing now that there's a new thing called Generation T. Yeah, Generation T. And that T stands for transition.
Oh.
I love this because what it does is it unifies us all under one big tent called transition. I don't care what age you are, young, old, anything in between. We are all facing huge transitions. And so I love this idea that now we have something, a generation that we can all feel part of and support each other in. What do you think about that, Paul?
Oh, I love it. I think it's very timely. If you look at where we were in 2019, and you see these silos of generation X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, boom, and so on. There's value in everyone's perspective. Everyone brings something to the table. In fact, everyone brings things to the table that they may not even recognize as being innovative or valuable or insightful or encouraging. Some of those are held back. And now, as you look at the current work environment, as I work with clients and I travel around the world and whatnot, we have an opportunity right now to cross generations. And there are, in some cases, 3 generations of people working in an existing environment, or multiple generations that have retired or that are living in Lake Chapala, Mexico. And they all bring to the table perspectives. They can support each other in this K-shift movement, or maybe we, for the moment, call it a T-shift movement, but we'll stick with K-shift because that's part of your brand. So when we bring those together and everyone is treated equally and everyone has these perspectives that they can share openly and safely, we find that they know there are more options than obstacles. They can find more paths to solutions and achieving great things than there are problems standing in the way. And there are more choices than there are challenges. So Gen T, count me in. I want to be a part of that 100%.
Yeah, I think that whole idea of being able to unify, because we tend to focus on our differences, but really, are we that different at our core? Don't we all want similar things, have similar hopes and dreams?
Mhm.
So I'm excited about that. I'm going to do some more investigating into the periphery.
Yeah, there you go.
The whole idea of a Gen T. So
Yeah.
I can't not ask you this question, Paul.
Yeah.
So when have you thought something was that you wanted was impossible?
Obviously, I've had challenges throughout my life, as everyone has. And the fourth grade teacher that told me that I was stupid and to not speak up and sit in the back of the class, that kind of stuck with me. In fact, some days it still comes up as I think about things to do. Starting my first business was in my late 20s, and it was against all odds. Well, I started a sportswear company. We did well. I happened to live in my car for a couple of months to pay bills and pay rent and pay payroll. I left my apartment to live in my car. But a year and a half later, the company had grown. And in fact, I sold the company. So what was considered impossible became my first foray into, or another foray into, look, it's not impossible. I just need to be careful who I ask about what is and isn't possible. There's something inside us.
That's a
says,
big one,
"Go."
Paul. Who to ask and who not to ask, who to listen to, who to not listen to, because there are plenty of people that will tell us it's not possible.
Right. And your questions at the beginning were very profound when you said, but what if it is possible? And how might this be possible? Just that small shift in the way you ask that question changes the neural connections in your brain to start searching for previous experiences or current references or resources. That is part of interpreting the peripheral thinkers, interpreting skill and others. So I absolutely love it. And just wanted to recall it.
Well, and that second question, what am I not seeing, really is a segue into that whole peripheral thinking. We only see what we're looking for.
Right.
And if we're not opening ourselves up to seeing something different, we're not going to see it. So those are two really, really powerful questions. And I'm curious, thinking about what's possible or what's not possible, but more what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
What does the future hold in store for Paul? How are you going to make magic happen going forward?
Well, okay, so I'm on a mission to share at least one peripheral thinking skill with 100,000 people by the end of 2025. I'm right at about 22,000 as of today, and I started this January of 2023. And that mission includes 1 million people by the end of 2030. And of course, I do this through interviews on TV and wonderful radio programs like yours and podcasts, and through speaking engagements. I also do daily posts on social media like LinkedIn and monthly newsletters. Peripheral thinking comes naturally to me because I'm dyslexic. But my mission is to help as many people as I can see the world the way dyslexics see it, filled with options and choices and paths and abundant opportunities. This isn't rah-rah. This is the way I see the world and have for my entire life. Yes, the world has problems, but they're overshadowed by the magical possibilities when you know where and how to look. The where to look is everywhere, and the how to look is with an open and interpreting mind.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about, but you know what? It's about time to wrap this up. So I want to thank you for being part of my very first episode of Make Magic Happen. And whether you listeners have been here live or on replay, I'm thrilled to have you part of my journey as a talk radio host. And if you want to continue the conversation with me, you can email me at kat@makemagichappennow.com.
And that's Cat with a K.
And that's Kat with a K. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. In this first episode, you had the opportunity to learn how being disruptable can create a magical disruption that could help you pursue the life you really want, and how being a peripheral thinker can help you discover endless new possibilities. So, Paul, remind our listeners, what's the best way to connect with you to continue their journey as peripheral thinkers?
It's easy for you to find me at pauldanielsjr.com. You can find me on the website. There's a contact link there. Learn more about the speaking that I do, the advisory firm I have, and learn about the newsletter.
Okay, that's great. So, one final question for our listeners. Are you willing to sacrifice what you are for what you could become? Are you ready to step back, interrupt your norm, ponder what else is possible? If so, what's one thing you could do differently today, this week, that would move you one step closer to the life you really want? I hope you'll join me next week as we discover how being disruptable can lead you to your purpose and your legacy. It's a transformational journey that you live out moment by moment, choice by choice. I'm excited for you to meet my next guest, Lydia Bowden. She is an amazing woman who is living her legacy, changing the world one child at a time. I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes that perfectly recaps what I hope for you going forward, by Judith McNaught. There'll be a few times in your life when all your instincts will tell you to do something that defies logic, upsets your plans, may seem crazy to others. When that happens, do it. Listen to your instincts and ignore everything else. Ignore logic, ignore the odds, ignore the complications. Just go for it. I hope you choose to go for it this week, whatever that looks like for you. Well, we're at the end of my first episode, and thanks again for joining me on this journey. Remember, if you want to continue the conversation, email me at kat with a K @makemagichappennow.com, or visit my website at katosullivan.com. And a very special thank you to Paul for sharing your insights. Are you ready to go for it? If so, what is that one thing you could do today, this week, that would move you closer to what you really want? I'd love to hear how that plays out for you on our next episode, when we get clarity around living our legacy. Yeah, I said living our legacy. We all are going to leave a legacy eventually, but what if we were living our legacy right now, moment by moment, choice by choice? I always end all my communications with onward and upward. And I hope that's where you'll be, onward and upward into the periphery to find those new possibilities that will make all the difference in your life. Looking forward to seeing you on our next episode next Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific.